It's my pleasure to introduce Susan Butler, Program Manager at the Southwest Environmental Finance Center. Susan, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you, Tara. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a beautiful day here in Albuquerque, and I hope it's not too bad wherever you are today. I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar. First, I want to thank Syracuse EFC for hosting and recording today's webinar, and thank our three presenters who are all in Texas. As a reminder, again, you can post questions in the chat box at any time during the webinar, and we will answer them at the end. Following the webinar, we will also send out written responses to those questions and any that we weren't able to respond to. So this webinar is part of the Environmental Finance Center Network's project called Smart Management for Small Water Systems. This project is funded by EPA and allows us to provide managerial and financial capacity building assistance to small water systems across the country. In this context, a small water system is defined as one serving 10,000 people or less. We have provided a series of in-person workshops on asset management, rates and finance, energy efficiency, water loss, access to funding, and water system collaboration. Hopefully, some of you were able to attend one of these workshops, but as part of this project, we are also holding webinars on most of these topics to accommodate people who are not able to attend training. So today's webinar is part of the Regionalization Collaboration series of webinars, and we have held 4 so far. We are recording today's webinar, and it will be posted on the EFCN website. You can access any of the past webinars on this project, as well as information about any of these topics at our website at efcnetwork.org. Our last webinar coming up is Ask the Expert. It's an opportunity to ask your asset management questions or get some advice on how to begin an asset management program. So this map shows the location of all the participants on today's webinar, and you can see we have a lot of different locations represented. So thank you and welcome everyone for joining us. So this webinar will showcase one regionalization collaboration effort used by a group of water systems in Texas. These systems found a way to work together to solve common problems while also maintaining a high degree of autonomy. So Tara, let's take a poll question, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, no problem. So I've just launched the poll question, which is, are you involved in any type of regional collaboration effort? And then please select one of the following. We have an emergency interconnection, but nothing else. We are involved in some informal collaboration. We are involved with a formal collaboration. We have physically interconnected with another water system, or we haven't yet but are interested in collaboration. So I could ask you all to please participate and vote in this. We'll give it about 10, 15 seconds to go.
Thank you, Tara. I think it'll just give us an idea of where people are in regionalization collaboration efforts.
Excellent. And as you can see, here are our results. So it looks like about 39% of people have physically interconnected with another water system. 36% of people haven't yet but are interested in collaboration. 14% have an emergency interconnection but nothing else. 11% are involved with some informal collaboration, and 0% of the people on today are involved with a formal collaboration. Thank you, and back to Susan.
Okay, great. Thanks everybody for responding to that. So I'd like to introduce our first presenter. He's Mehdi Tahari with the Water Enforcement Branch of the Water Resources Section of EPA Region 6 in Dallas, and he will talk about some of the compliance issues that were part of the impetus for this collaboration. So Mehdi, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Susan. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Mehdi Taheri, of course, with the EPA Region 6 Water Enforcement Branch. I am the enforcement coordinator for the state of Texas. First, I'd like to give you a brief summary of our efforts around the Waco area and the status of those. First of all, you should know that back in 2011, EPA implemented the new Enforcement Response Policy. We call it ERP. This meant that any public water system with a score resulting from the application of the enforcement targeting formula, which is greater than or equal to 11 points, considered a priority system for an enforcement response under this policy. I believe most or all states have adopted this policy. EPA entered into a work sharing agreement with the state of Texas, TCEQ. They had used bilateral compliance agreement, which did not meet the definition of a formal enforcement action. We identified several systems that were in violation, and when the BCA, that was our agreement, which we agreed when a BCA is expired, then EPA issue a formal administrative order to those systems in an effort to get these systems back into compliance. Right now, we have 7 small public water systems in the Waco area under orders for arsenic violation. The next slide shows next slide, Matt, Susan.
Sorry, Mehdi, I'm having a little technical difficulty here.
Oh, okay, I wait.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, that's the map of Texas, of course. This map of a cluster of small systems around the Waco, that is square you see here, Waco, Texas, that have arsenic violations. All are in fairly close proximity. And then the next slide, I would like to talk about, from those 7 systems which we issued the orders to, 2 of them dropped out of the FHLM project. FHLM, of course, is I believe, a group which, all these water systems, these 7 systems, including the other systems, I believe there are maybe 18 or 20 of them with this project, for this project. They dropped out of the FHLM, but 2 other water systems joined the FHLM. These systems, they proposed other plans that were approved, and they should be in operation within the next year. These 2 which I talked about, and they dropped from the FHLM. And slide number 5, of course, it shows status. I am going to talk about the status of orders. Once these systems were placed under an AO, an administrative order by EPA, the systems had to submit a plan and achieve compliance within 18 months. Also, they have to submit to EPA an initial report on the progress made to bring the public water system into compliance with the arsenic maximum contaminant levels. Following the initial report, quarterly progress report must be submitted to EPA as well. The quarterly progress reports are very important because they show continued effort on the part of the PWS. Because the solution for this whole cluster is a complex one, extensions were requested and have been granted by EPA. As I talked about, like 18 months compliance deadline, we extended to 2 more years or until 2016. For example, why we did that? Because the Waco project is a huge project, and there will be 92 miles of water lines needed to tie these systems to the city of Waco. Also, cost of construction is very high, which is about 50 million. Of course, funding is an issue, and FHLM and many funding agencies, the state, Texas, and EPA are working together to obtain funding for this project. Ms. Susan Roth of Roth Consulting Engineering will talk about that. We hope for the project to be completed by 2016-2017. EPA has worked collaboratively with Texas and FHLM to resolve these and many other public water system violations in the state, and I believe it has worked really well so far. That concludes my brief presentation, and thank you.
Thank you, Mehdi, for that overview of the compliance issues, and hopefully people who have questions will type them in the chat box. So our next presenter is Charles Beceda, who is president of the FHLM Water Supply Corporation, as well as the manager of Byromi Water Supply Corporation. So he has quite a few hats that he wears. He'll talk about the formation of FHLM, how they operate, and some of the challenges that they've faced. So Charles, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Susan. My name is Charles Beceda, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to y'all today about the regionalization project. We started out basically in the year 2000 because of we were looking for another source of water, and the interconnection that we had with our neighboring system was not a guarantee that they could service any water at all. And so I started looking at alternatives for us, Byron, ourselves, but everything was basically out of our budget for the small system that we are. We have about 1,500 customers. Excuse me. And so we started writing letters to neighboring systems and trying to address the problem that some of these systems had also. And so we basically got past I beat your city in a football game or basketball game that everybody remembers for 20 years. And we come together on a platform of trying to work together on a long-term water supply. And at our kickoff meeting in 2002, we formed FHLM, which is Falls, Hill, Limestone, and McClellan County, and to address these problems. And we had an attorney in Austin that helped us tremendously from Texas Rural Water to set up our corporation, and The reason we chose a WSC, it was the cheapest avenue that we could start without having to put up a bunch of money. And, but like I say, it took quite a few meetings, and like I say, we had asked for everybody that would join to pay in $1,500 and then add a board member from their board to our board. And we did that, and everything seemed started working. Our progress was that probably go ahead and get some surface water from the city of Waco. And like I say, everything was working. We had a first bid of about $21 million, and everybody had thought that $30 was too much per customer, because when we put this thing together with all 16 in it, it had over 10,000 meters. And like I say, we had was on pretty good until the rule changed in 2003 about the arsenic, and able to get up errands and for a while, and trying to work through it, and then we had a few people that still did not want to purchase water. And then once the drought came along, well, it brought everybody back a little closer, plus the deal of everybody receiving a letter from EPA, and their variances were no longer valid, and we had 18 months to come under achieving the less than 10 parts per billion on our arsenic. And out of the 16, there was 7 systems that had that problem, and but the other systems were in need of additional water, and so we kept this cluster together, and with the onset of trying to come up with the financing from Water Development Board, and we were on the process of doing that and trying to sign a contract with the city of Waco whenever they decided that they did not know if they had enough water to service all of us. And so all contract talks stopped at that time, and I appreciate EPA working with us, and Marty especially, and that we were looking for some common ground, and then we found out of a grant program from Water Development Board to do a study, and we were able to contact Susan Roth, and we were trying to start that process, and we were able to receive a grant, and we're very happy about that, and that's basically what we have. I mean, we're in this study, we're going to look for strategies that we might be able to do, a regional cluster that people would receive water from different areas. So, like I say, that's where we're at, and if anybody has any questions later, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you very much, Susan.
Charles, could you talk a little bit about the creation and some of the challenges of FHLM, how you got everybody to the table?
Well, like I say, our biggest problem was that there was some animosity because of a football game or something like that, and we were able, for some reason, to we visited a lot of boards and explained to people that none of us individually could achieve this type of project, and we were able to convince the majority of the boards that yes, this we all understand that, and that was, I think, one of the reasons that people were ready to participate in doing something like that, because they realized that they might need water for the future also.
So was there any discussion between those who needed water supply and those who were out of compliance? I mean, it seems like they had different...
Well, we did. We had different agendas, basically, and like I say, at first it was one agenda to get additional water, and then as we progressed, like I say, about after 2006, then we had, you know, a little different agenda, basically, and 2011 came and we really had a different agenda for 7 of us, but overall everybody was good with it. We had a few people that were kind of deciding that maybe they could go out on their own now and try to get water from City of Waco on their own agreements, and they found out kind of right away that Waco was kind of committed actually to FHLM because there was only one person that was going to be responsible for that bill, and they didn't want 16 different contracts at that time. And so that part was a plus for us, and let's go ahead.
So Charles, FHLM is the grant recipient, and will they be the regional entity that oversees whatever project will be developed?
Yes, to a certain extent. The ones that will, we have a few people that are in their project right now that are not members of FHLM, and we're hoping that they will join us, and basically we will end up trying to put this project together and then have a central billing system for everybody to kind of help out and everything, but everybody still keeps their identity and they just buy water through one supplier.
Charles, I have known you for quite a while, and you have been involved in this effort, I know, for quite a while. I've heard you talk at the Texas Water Infrastructure Coordinating Committee. I've heard you talk at board meetings. So it looks to me like one important lesson from this collaboration is that it needs a champion, and it sounds like you've been the champion over a number of years.
Well, maybe I have, and maybe I haven't, but I do know that water is dear to my heart, and it was to my dad. And like I say, I think I have enough probably for as long as I have to live, but I have a lot of children and grandchildren in my community, and like I say, we like the rural type setting, and so that gives me a little more sustainability and trying to get all this done. And like I say, I'll go down to the earth if I can help somebody, because we actually hauled water for 17 years before we had gotten together and formed a WSC to get water to the communities. And so, you know, it's been a challenge from day one, but you know, there are a lot of good people out there, and a lot of them are ready to roll up their sleeve, and we just have to prime the pump, as they say.
Thank you, Charles. I know you have worked really hard with EPA, with TCEQ, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, as well as with all the water systems, overcoming the challenges, especially the challenge of football games and basketball games. So thank you, Charles, for talking with us today.
Thank you, Susan.
Our next presenter is Susan Roth of Susan Roth Consulting. Susan specializes in conducting water and wastewater master plans, as well as developing overall regional plans for counties and other political subdivisions. Susan prepared the grant application for FHLM, and she'll talk about the next steps and about the feasibility. So Susan, I'll turn it over to you.
This is great. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you all today. And let's see if I can see my presentation. Today, I will be basically just expanding on what Mehdi and what Charles have shared with you all today, and just giving you an overview about the Texas Water Development Board, the Regional Water Facility Planning Grant Program that they offer. It is a fabulous program. Even though I am not an employee of Texas Water Development Board, I can't say enough great things about this program that's available through the state, through Texas. The program itself, it provides a 50% matching grant, and it provides, let's see, wait a minute. Oops, I'm having an issue, an IT issue there for a minute. The Water Development Board provides a 50% matching grant to 2 or more political subdivisions of the state. In this program, it provides grant funding to evaluate and to determine different regional solutions for both water and or wastewater infrastructure for a particular study area. Now, each year, the Texas legislature appropriates a particular amount of matching funds for this program. For this year, this cycle, the Texas legislature appropriated $500,000 of matching funds. And matching funds, those are awarded to the primary applicant, and it's based on, that match is based on the amount of cash and in-kind contributions that are provided from a number of project participants for a grant application. And in-kind service, just to quickly mention about that, in-kind service is basically just staff time, with gathering data about your water system, hosting a meeting. There's many easy ways to gain in-kind contributions, and that's just loaded hourly rates that are calculated to determine that in-kind amount. Now, really quick, just to kind of mention as far as about the Facility Planning Grant Program, the planning guidelines, they focus on infrastructure planning needs. And again, that includes regional treatment. Depending if you're doing a wastewater or a water type study, it's going to look at collection, distribution lines. You can also include wastewater reuse. It's also eligible. The guidelines also require looking at the sizing of the facilities, an implementation schedule, cost estimates, and they look at basically in a 5-year phasing increment for a 30-year study period is what we'll be focusing on these studies, just to kind of clarify. Also, Texas Water Development Board requires water conservation and drought contingency plans to be submitted along with the report and or developed as a result of the study. And then also, too, Water Development Board requires public involvement and a minimum of 3 public meetings to be conducted throughout the study. And then at the very end, because Water Development Board they don't want the study to, they're interested in seeing the study actually implemented and not just a report that ends up on a shelf. So part of the study also requires a section dedicated to different funding alternatives that are available out there for actually implementing the recommendations from the study. And that also has to include an evaluation of looking at the different programs, financial programs offered by the Texas Water Development Board. And again, just to kind of highlight, these studies, they're conducted on a feasibility level. They're just to identify the potential problems for the study area and to identify cost-effective solutions. Moving on. as Charles and Mehdi had already touched on, for this as an example, this planning grant that I just recently put together for FHLM Water Supply Corporation, I started the work. The way it works, Texas Water Development Board, they put out a request for qualifications, and they submit that information to the Texas Register, and that's usually the first weekend or like the first Friday of October. And then you have just a few months then to prepare your grant application, and the deadline for this past cycle was December 20th is when I submitted the grant application. And so with that, this grant application, it initially just was looking at just the FHLM member entities for the grant application, but it really expanded once kind of the word got out there, and I would go to a number of board meetings, city council meetings, visited with a number of entities, because you want to try to make these studies as exclusive as possible. You're not trying to, inclusive as possible. You're not trying to exclude folks. And so based on the amount of cash and in-kind service that contributions I could raise, that we could effectively conduct a study, this is the list of, I'll quickly just show you a list here of all of the project participants that were signed up, and that involved getting a resolution from their board and or their council. And so we have FHLM, the way I have it listed here with an asterisk, FHLM Water Supply Corporation is the primary applicant that was designated with the grant application to Texas Water Development Board. And then besides them, then we have 25 entities that officially signed up. And so it gives you, here's just a list. We have all of the counties involved. I've received letters from the judges at each of these counties. We have the Groundwater Conservation District. We have a river authority. We have a number of these water supply corporations that Mehdi had touched on as far as having compliance issues. And then we also have a private water system, Moore Water System. We have City of Mart, City of Marlin, Mount Calm. And then we also have included 2 private companies, industrial. We're looking at Cargill Meat Solutions and Sanderson Farms. They are in the area, and they are also in need of water for their production efforts. So we have a nice group as far as just a wide variety of entities and organizations involved in the study. Moving on here, this is just going to quickly run through just the proposed study goals for this particular grant project. We'll be looking at the feasibility of developing a regional water system to replace and or supplement the multiple systems that are in place, and kind of basically what Charles had mentioned. We will be looking at, because we're focusing on basically 4 counties, it's a very large study area. It's not like there's going to be just one regional solution or one regional water treatment plant to serve all of these entities. And so, like Charles and others have mentioned, we will be looking at basically small regional cluster systems based on the geography and the topography of kind of how the basins, the watersheds, for gravity flow. We'll be looking at some of those items for how we come up with these different regional systems, as well as just looking at folks that are interested in wanting to work together as well. So it's a bit political as well. So then we'll also be looking at, as I've mentioned here on the second bullet, looking at some of the water management strategies that are identified in the Region G Regional Water Plan. Texas Water Development Board develops for different regions in our state. And this is information that's on their website if y'all are interested. And it just basically breaks the state into different regions, and within those regions they come up with a specific regional water plan, and they identify different strategies for different entities within that particular region. So we will build on some of that information, as well as investigate different water supply and treatment options, to address the arsenic compliance issue. And then also, too, just the groundwater levels, the declining groundwater levels that are in the Trinity Aquifer, where a number of these groundwater wells are located. And then, of course, last but, or one of the last items, bullets on this slide, is just, again, looking at what are some cost-effective and reliable water supply solutions to serve these areas. Continuing on, we'll be looking at interconnections just to provide redundancy. There's always, with these studies, you get a few small water systems that sign up, that participate, that really don't want to be in the water business, and they want to connect to their neighbor. They basically want to get out of the business. And then with this study, we will definitely have quite a bit of public involvement, just because it's a large project and it's high profile. And also too, with these studies, at least when I conduct a lot of these kind of regional planning engineering studies, I usually include a minimum of 4 public meetings into the whole planning process. And right now we're looking at trying to have a project kickoff meeting probably around the end of May, based on when the legal contracts are all reviewed and signed between FHLM and Texas Water Development Board. They were just awarded a $175,000 grant back on March 24th. So here just a few weeks ago, they just were awarded the funding. And that $175,000 grant is out of that $500,000 that had been appropriated by the Texas legislature. And just to kind of let y'all know, Water Development Board, because of the drought situation, they had received a record number of applications, and they were only able to fund 3 projects in the state. So we feel very fortunate that FHLM is one of the 3 and has received the grant funds. And so we'll look at trying to have the project kickoff meeting the end of May, and then we'll be looking at submitting a draft report to Texas Water Development Board around the end of August of next year for 2015. And real quick, the scope of work, what Texas Water Development Board requires in these engineering studies, this just quickly kind of touches on the different items that are required between looking at transmission and treatment alternatives, cost estimates, funding options, and as I mentioned, the water conservation and drought management plans. So that, in a nutshell, just gives you kind of an overview of kind of an example project here for FHLM. At this time, I'll turn it back over to you, Susan, unless if there's any other questions.
Thank you, Susan. Quick question. How much is the cash match that's required by the grant?
Oh, the match, well, I'm sorry, that's from the participants?
Yes.
And, and there's not an exact requirement from Texas Water Development Board, but you want to have a healthy amount of cash that's been contributed in order to make your grant application rank higher. And so in this case, we had approximately about a 50-50% match, 50% cash, 50% in-kind service.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Susan. Well, we have actually gone through this really quickly, so I'm going to turn it over to Tara to see if there are any questions for any of the panelists.
So far, we actually haven't had any questions relevant to the slides come in or the presentation. So I'm going to take this time, if anyone wants to go right into the question section on your GoToWebinar panel on the right and type in any questions you have.
And also, I don't know if people are aware that the Environmental Finance Center Network has received an additional round of funding from EPA. The contracts are currently working to be in place, and I have asked the presenters if they would be willing to come back and participate in another webinar with some updates, and fortunately they have agreed, so that's something we can look forward to later this year or next year. I think it's important to realize that this has been a very long time in this effort for collaboration. It's been a long time. There have been a lot of different entities involved, from regulatory to funding to the water systems themselves, and there certainly has been several champions. Of course, Charles has been the biggest champion, but other champions at EPA and at TCEQ who have really worked with this group to solve the issues of water compliance and water quantity water supply?
Well, we have two different questions that came in. So the first one is from Thomas, and he asks, what new water quality issues do you anticipate with regard to disinfection by products using surface water pumped over long distances?
Charles, that sounds like a question for you.
Is he talking about THMs or?
No, I'm not sure. It's just the general question. Not
okay.
sure.
Read that to me one more time, if you don't mind.
Yes, no problem. What new water quality issues do you anticipate with regard to disinfection by products using surface water pumped over long distances?
Well, we thought about using chloramine, since the surface water that's being treated is treated with chloramines, but we are looking at a different process that we might be able to aerate the water before we blend it and keep our free chlorine system that we have there. We believe that it'll also help lower the THMs by aerating it and be able to just use free chlorine to retreat the blended water.
Okay.
All right. And then one more general comment, sort of. Jeffrey was asking if there could be any discussion to the rate structure for regionalization.
Yes, we had started out. I didn't put that in our presentation, that we were basically going to figure the rate on 10,000 meters, but in doing some calculations and looking at the pipeline sizes to certain places, and also with the differentiation in somebody wanted 1 million gallons a day versus 500,000 gallons or 100,000 gallons a day. We've figured out real fast that the cost would not be equal overall, and so we had gone back and actually figured cost per thousand of use, and in our contract with Waco, they had their operation, wholesale cost, our water, raw water, and then their continued support in upgrading their system to help take care of ours. And so that's why we had to use a variable rate structure. And like I say, until we came up with that, well, that brought more people back in, because they felt like they would, if they were closer, they would pay a little bit less than the guy that was way out there on the end like me. So, like I say, from what we started to where we finished, I think we have that pretty much lined out on that arena, and not on a per meter basis.
And Charles, I was at several meetings with you where in public meetings people were quite concerned about the rate increase, and they raised many issues, and that I know has been a long time in being hammered out, what is going to be fair and equitable to all of the participants. And I would assume that under this new feasibility study, again, you would be looking at rates and how it would be structured.
Yes, that's what that's my goal anyway, because that is the key to making this whole regional system work, is to make it fair and equitable to everybody. And if it costs more, people understand, and but they want to make sure that my neighbor's not paying for some of the water that I use, and I the same. I wouldn't want to pay for his water with my customers having to pay for his water. So that's one of the strategies I hope that we have in this study.
So there's just one question that relates a lot to that, and May have already covered it, but how did you address equitable cost distribution to a customer closer to the initial source?
Well, what we've come across basically is we'd start out with a 30-inch pipe, and we would end up with a 10 or 12-inch pipeline, to each one of those systems. So basically, in that calculation, generally the people right off the beginning there are larger users, so it really surprised me that it worked out as well as it did when we figured it, for the amount of water that they needed on a daily basis.
All right, and then another question. Has the engineer addressed water age in the feasibility?
You said water rates and feasibility?
Water age, the age of the water.
Oh, age of the water.
Yeah.
Yes, that was in the design of the pipeline. We had come up with some scenarios on what we had thought we would need on a daily basis, so that way water would be moving continuously. We would have to put up this is all with the city of Waco right now that I'm speaking at. We would have to put up some large storage tanks there so we could go ahead and keep moving it 24 hours a day.
Okay, one more question. How would you handle a positive coliform result for consecutive or upstream systems?
Well, there's a new regulation, I believe, with TCEQ on how to handle that right now here in Texas. In other words, and I don't know if they have the final rule on that yet, so I really can't elaborate on that. But like I say, in old days, basically, you try to isolate the area that you had the problem in, and I would assume the new system is going to be similar to that, but we might have to hire a consultant. Now, I think that was one of the things that we would have to hire somebody to come in and do that for us if we had a positive.
And thank you very much. That's all the questions we have for now.
Okay.
So thank you to Tara and all of the presenters, and thank you to all of you who participated. We're going to get you out of here a little bit early this afternoon. So again, all of these slides and the audio portion will be posted on the Environmental Finance Center network. And Tara, anything else?
Just a quick reminder, we will be sending out an evaluation link about an hour after this concludes today, so we'd really, really appreciate any feedback you could give us. Thank you, guys.
And all of the participants, all of the presenters' contact information is on the slide, so if you have any additional questions, you can contact them directly. So thank you, everyone, and Tara, we'll sign off.